Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today we're going to be talking about the new album from Riff Raff, titled Neon Icon. I don't even know where to start with this. Okay, if you're not familiar with certain subsections of hip-hop, you might not be familiar with Riff Raff. And after I describe him, you might start wishing that that had remained the case. Riff Raff is a white rapper from Houston who started his career in show business on reality TV before becoming affiliated with Soulja Boy. Eventually the two of them parted ways, with Soulja Boy leaving the parting shot of calling him a cokehead. But you know what? Riff Raff was somehow able to garner enough attention through his mixtapes and self-released album to get signed to Diplo's record label Mad Descent and release his many times delayed album Neon Icon. And from what I had heard from Riff Raff before going into this album, look, I had no idea how seriously I was supposed to take this album. On the one hand, if it's self-aware comedy, well, I didn't exactly find him funny or clever or witty, at least on previous releases. But on the other hand, if I'm supposed to take him seriously, as some people clearly do, or say that he's the white Lil B, look, as much as I don't like the bass god, it's clear that something was knocked loose in Lil B's brain that caused him to spew the inveterate pop culture free association that he calls lyrics. While Lil B could reasonably be called an outsider artist, Riff Raff feels a bit like a poser to that crown, or at least someone attempting the same style of gaudy, bargain barrel based luxury rap. As much as Riff Raff claims that James Franco's character Alien from Spring Breakers was based on him, I don't see it, because there was an air of menace and sleaze to that character that was undercut by an honest naivete. And while it's debatable how honest Riff Raff's portrayal is, it's so silly that I can't feel the slightest element of menace from his rap persona. I get nothing from it. But you know what? Putting all that aside, I was curious about this album at least. At the very least, I can look forward to guest verses from Mac Miller and Childish Gambino. So on that note, how's Neon Icon? Well, I think I'm starting to get it, at least a little bit, which is good for me, but not exactly good for Riff Raff. Let me put it this way. Do you remember right after Tommy Wiseau released The Room as a serious indie drama initially, and then immediately jumped and said he was meant to be considered as a black comedy? When I listen to this album, I get the feeling that Riff Raff is taking himself as seriously as Tommy Wiseau was initially when he made his masterpiece, but he hasn't quite realized that most people are laughing at him instead of laughing with him. Mostly because there are some people actually are laughing with him, and that's just sad. So, okay, what I'm going to do is analyze this album from two angles. From the group that's laughing with Riff Raff and the group that's laughing at him. The people who are taking it unironically and the people who take it ironically. See if I can find at least one level where this album can somewhat work for me. So, okay. Let's start with the instrumentation and the production, where arguably ironic and unironic appreciation can meet somewhat in agreement. And honestly, it's a real mixed bag. I've said it before that I'm not a big fan of trap beats included in luxury rap, because it's a really awkward, dark tone to have what's supposed to be fun party music fused with such cold, sinister tones. And that's what gets songs like the clunky synths on Wetter Than Tsunami, the hazy warble on Versace Python, and the borderline chiptune keyboards in Tiptoe in My Jordans and How to Be the Man, that really don't come across as all that fun, at least to me. Now, that's not saying there aren't some ridiculous instrumentals that I actually did kind of like. The introduction had some bouncing grime and energy that recalled some late 80s gangster rap. Aquaberry Dolphin had that sample dolphin shittering. That was a kind of an interesting choice. I like that. VIP Pass to the Heart. It was standard disco-inspired 90s era club dance music that at least had decent groove. And the Diplo-produced Cocaine, it was at least a fun, sizzling guitar riff there, and a pretty great hook, all things considered, that easily make it the best song of the album, at least for me. But then you have moments that come straight out of left field, like the pseudo-psychedelic Lava Glaciers that had a good vibe courtesy of a prog rock Nectar sample until Riff Raff started opening his mouth, or the terribly overwrought acoustic ballad Time that, oh Jesus, that was bad, or Cool It Down, a song that feels important from like a bad early 2000s R&B hip-hop crossover, especially with Amber Coltman on the hook. The problem that you get when you bring this many genres on board and play them as relatively straightforward as Riff Raff seems to do isn't just wildly diverging levels of production quality and no consistent tone, but also sense that Riff Raff wasn't intending songs like Time or Lava Glaciers to be played as jokes, and that he does think that he has something that's truly deep to share with everyone, which is kind of terrifying. And that's when the ironic and unironic appraisal of Riff Raff must inevitably diverge. So let's start with those people who are taking Riff Raff seriously. I'll try to take him seriously. Now, in terms of the luxury rap that I like, I admit that Riff Raff isn't my cup of tea. At least when T.I. or Ludacris or even 50 Cent in his better moments used to rap about their wealth, they played it with a little bit more class and swagger and charisma. Riff Raff does not have that degree of class and dignity. On the other hand, he's not the sort of person who would invest his wealth in business, but he'd spend it all on gaudy chains, bad tattoos, hookers, and blow. And that's not a lifestyle or even an escapist fantasy that interests me at all. It's flashy, it's got no class, it's a sideshow attraction, and one that I can't even admire for its construction. We'll come back to this. And the sad fact is that Riff Raff really has very little to say outside of that luxury rap that even approaches depth. It makes Childish Gambino's self-flagellating verse out on Lava Glaciers feel completely out of left field, taking the psychedelia of the track and reaching a very sad clarity where Gambino laments the fact that he wants to create deeper, more introspective art, and yet is expected as an entertainer to make, well, what Riff Raff is doing. The pop art that Gambino considers token and worthless and shallow and lacking in deeper meaning. Because on this album, it kinda is. Now, to be fair to Riff Raff, he does try somewhat on time to make statements about how time goes on, but it's so resoundingly trite because the consequences are so shallow and there's no real dramatic stakes to these songs. And then there's Cool It Down, which seems to be the anti-hater track against those who doubt his hustle. And honestly, I'm not doubting his hustle, but there's no self-awareness here that shows that he knows what his newfound status makes him appear. He doesn't know how he looks like to us. So, okay then, is there on some level of irony that I can enjoy this? Is this supposed to fall into the category of so bad it's good, or just be kind of funny in some way, that we aren't supposed to take this album all that seriously? It's all supposed to be a massive joke? Well, I'm not sure I can totally buy that either, half because Riff Raff is playing it so straight. Yeah, there are some ridiculous lyrics, especially in Aquaberry Dolphin, and mostly courtesy of Mac Miller, who seems to have some level of self-awareness about it all. And then there seems to be Mike Posner's contributions to Maybe You Love Me, which screams obnoxiousness, but at least seems to know about it on some level. But you know what? Beyond that, here's the one joke of this album, that it's so funny that Riff Raff is such an exaggerated, hyperbolic caricature of a rapper that you just can't take him seriously. That he's so bad, you can pity him on some level for trying, just have to laugh at it. But there's two huge problems with the joke. The first being that you really can't say it works when mainstream rappers who are taken seriously by critics use the same level of hyperbole. Rappers like Lil Wayne and Rick Ross use very similar hyperbolic language and metaphors when it comes to wealth and sex, with Riff Raff just being more in your face about it. And here's the second part of the joke. It's not funny, because we live in an era with The Lonely Island where I'm on a Boat does the exact same thing as what Riff Raff is trying to do on this album, and it does it better because Andy Samberg and company have real talent for good hooks and know that these jokes work best as a 3-minute song, not an entire album and not an entire artistic persona. Because let's face it here, Riff Raff is barely passable as a rapper. His wordplay is boilerplate, his rhymes are often very forced, his flow is incredibly basic, and once you can tune into his hyperbolic mindset, he never really pushes any boundaries or has anything to say beneath it. Any philosophy that he tries to bring to the table is painfully shallow, and his metaphors are extended pop culture references. He's the equivalent of a late period episode of Family Guy. And say what you will about Seth MacFarlane, but at least he can sing, a talent that Riff Raff does not have, and his barely on-key squawking is intolerable when it's not boring as tar. Look, the most that I can say about this record is that the song Cocaine, it's kind of fun on a very visceral, based level. But you know what, that's it. To me, reviewing this album, it's a little bit sad. I'm almost kind of depressed I brought attention to this, because Riff Raff doesn't seem to have a clue about how he looks to everyone outside his immediate fan base that encourages his puddle-shallow worldview. And I don't get the feeling this is a shtick or a pose. You don't put the sloppily written skits like the ones he chooses for this record on with the delusion that it is, on some level, profoundly deep. You don't let Childish Gambino get on a melancholy verse that shows the inherent emptiness of this material and effectively break this entire album unless you have bought so thoroughly into your own mythos that you can't just see the forest for the trees. For Riff Raff, this album's not a joke, and for me, it's not funny either. It's just bad. The rapping is subpar and impossible to invest in, the singing is atrocious, and the instrumentation and production is so-so at best. For me, it's a 4 out of 10 and not recommended. Look, if you want comedy rap, go to The Lonely Island or Weird Al or any number of intentionally funny rappers on YouTube who are better than this. And if you want shallow luxury rap, there's enough established artists who are so much better on a technical level than this. And at least you could dance to Party Rock Anthem by LMFAO. Just skip this album. It'll go away on its own. At least I hope so. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. If there's anything I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or if there's any other albums coming up that you'd like me to take a look at, I'd be more than happy to give a listen. So until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.